In this third video, I'm going to demonstrate how to have an extruded box come out of the top face of the flattened cube that we created in the first video. So this is what the model will end up looking like, and you could see how all of the edges, just like they were on the first box, are nicely rounded. The corners are nicely rounded. But I don't want you to see the specific geometry at this point, but this is what we're going to end up with. So I'm actually going to switch back to the first layer, which will have our original box that we ended up with in the first tutorial. One of the things that you want to do many times in subdivision modeling is, rather than just extrude a box right off this face, we really want the geometry to go all through the object, and this will help ensure that we have quads throughout the model, and we don't end up with any really large n-gons or bad geometry. So to do that, we could do that a couple of ways. One way is for us to use the knife tool and slice right through the model and create the beginning part of our box that we're going to extrude out. And we could also go back and use Bandsaw Pro, and I'm just going to clear out Bandsaw. I'm going to add another cut line and just kind of move those around a little bit. So both of those are acceptable ways. With this object, because it's basically a flattened square, the knife works fine, and as you can see, it basically did the same exact thing as Bandsaw Pro did. As you get into more and more complex objects that are not very linear like this object is, Bandsaw Pro will start working a little bit better because it will start following the poly rings that are on the flow of the object, and we'll get into that more later and as the objects get more and more complex. But essentially right now we have the base area that we're going to start extruding out of. If you're not happy with the shape of this new box that we just created, this one right here, we could always go through and move around some of the points. And like if you want to thin the box up a little bit, we could just move all the points together. And now the box is a little bit thinner, so you could always go back and edit it that way rather than redoing the entire thing. As you notice, as we kind of look around the object, at this point there are still only quads on this object, which is one of the important things. If we had only created this box from this first face, or we had done a Boolean operation, you would have ended up with at least a couple of large n-gons along the way. And again, for the subdivision modeling, it's usually a little bit better to keep it all quads. At this point, I'm going to select that polygon that we created in the middle, and I'm going to use multi-shift, and I'm going to right-click on the polygon, and then I'm going to shift that box out, and basically shift that as high as I want it. It doesn't really matter at this point for this object, but I'm going to do it maybe a little bit higher. Right about there is fine. I'm going to accept that, and we have our extruded box sticking out. If we go to the subpatch mode at this point, obviously that's going to turn into a little mound, and that's because we don't have any of our control loops, just like we did on the corners and edges of the original object. So essentially what we need to do at this point is create control loops on the outside of this connection point as well as the inside of all the connection points. And again, this could easily be done with the knife tool as well as Bandsaw Pro. So I'll do one side one way and the other side the other way, just to show you how it can be done. So I'm going to select the knife tool first, and I'm going to slice right through. I'm actually holding down the control key to constrain it to a straight line. And as you can see, I'm slicing right inside the box. So we're creating a new loop right inside the box now on one side. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. and accept that. Just like before, it's nice to have these cuts be the exact same distance apart, and again with the knife tool that is a little difficult. So if we need to adjust that to get them to be a little more even, you can see this loop looks like it's a little bit further away than this loop from the edge. I'm just going to go into edge mode, select that single edge, and I'm going to do a loop select. And I have that whole loop selected now, all the way around. And then I'm just going to zoom into the top view, and with the move tool, just nudge it over ever so slightly. So again, even though the knife tool is not as accurate from that point of view, you could always go back and adjust it pretty quickly. For the other side, I'm going to switch back into polygon mode, select 2 polys, and go into Bandsaw Pro. And I'm going to just clear out that setting, and I'm going to move the loop over to the point where, if we're in our top view, we want this to be pretty squarish. We want this to be pretty close to square, and again, that will ensure that all the rounding is pretty even on this new extruded part. And that looks pretty good to me. So at that point, I'm just going to hit the mirror button, and after I do that, you'll see it will create the new loop on the other side. And I'm going to take note that it was at 6.5%. I'm going to accept that, deselect everything, and you can see we have our loops, 2 on each side now, and 2 on this side. We still need to add a little bit more geometry. We need to add the control loops at the top, so we need to add another loop that goes around right in here, as well as another loop that goes right around the base of this extruded box. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use Bandsaw Pro again for that. I'm going to select these 2 faces to let it know we want to go around this way. Go back to Bandsaw, and that's actually pretty close to what we want. If we go into like the back view, we could see that maybe they need to be a little bit further apart. So I'm just going to clear that out. I'm going to drag that one down till it's a little bit closer to a square. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to hit the mirror button. And then I'm going to accept that. Deselect my geometry. And at this point, we're almost done with our control loops, except if we go to subpatch mode again at this point, you can see this corner is really smoothed out. And the reason is that we don't have one more set of control loops on the outside of the box. So essentially right around here, on all 4 sides. So again, we could add that in with the knife tool, we could add that in with Bandsaw Pro. I think I'll use the knife tool really quickly for some of these. I'm going to go into full screen mode on the top view. I'm going to hold the control key down and just slice right through. And I'm going to do that on all 4 sides of that extruded box. Alright, so if you go back to all the views, we can see pretty quickly that we have what is now all of our extra control loops for that box that's extruded out. And if we go into subpatch mode now, you'll see that everything looks pretty good. And you could actually be done at this point, and there'd be really nothing wrong with the model. Everything is all quads. It's a very clean model. All the curves are, for the most part, the same curve smoothness. But the other thing that's really good to keep an eye out for is having too much geometry, especially on the subdivided models. As you subdivide them more, the geometry will go up considerably. So if we could reduce any of this geometry and still keep really clean quads, it's definitely a good thing. And with corners like these, one easy way to get rid of a lot of geometry is to use this technique, which I'm going to show you right now. If you switch to the point mode and just deselect everything. What I'm going to do is select that point right there and this one right here, and just connect those. Again, with the shortcut is L. And you may say, oh, we have a lot of tries. We're going to end up with some tries now, but we're going to clean that out. So I'm going to go through on each of these corners and connect those points. In this last corner. And now after that, I'm going to go back in, and the edges that are on either side, so I'm going to switch to edge mode, and select those two edges on either side of that angle that I just created, the edge I just created, and I'm going to dissolve that. That's under the construction menu in the reduce area. You have the dissolve button. That is another one that I have in my mouse menus. So I'm just going to go through on all four corners and dissolve those two edges. And this last one, now at that point, again, we're ending up with a lot of n-gons, and we really haven't reduced that much geometry. So this last step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm in edge mode again. I'm going to select this edge, and then I'm going to select the loop, the entire loop. So if you go to your selection menu, you could do a select loop up here. That is another one that I have in my mouse menus, because I do a lot of loop selections, or you could set it to a key command. And after I have that loop, you can see it goes all the way around, and it stops at the same point on both sides. I'm going to just dissolve that whole loop. And I'm going to do that for each of these sides. Select that edge, select the loop, dissolve it, select the edge, select the loop, dissolve it, and then we have one more. Select the edge, select the loop, and dissolve. And then you could see it's the geometry or the shape of the object didn't change at all. We still have all of our control loops on either side. So we have on the outside, we have on the inside, on all four sides. When we go into subpatch mode, it looks exactly the same. Except we have a lot less geometry. And actually, as I think I just noticed, I'm going to go into the point mode and make sure we don't have any stray points, which I think we do. Yep, see, we're picking up stray points there, which I need to go back and delete. So I'm just going to select those. They're probably on each of the corners, so I'm going to select those, hit the delete key. We definitely want to get rid of those stray points. And then I'm just going to make sure we don't have any other stray points around. I think we're okay now. So now, if we go back into subpatch mode, very clean object, smooth corners all the way around. We've minimized the amount of geometry needed, so during render time it will render at least as quick as possible, and we're still definitely all quads at this point. So I hope this video has been helpful, and again, feel free to send me any feedback or questions you may have. I'm going to also try to post these source files on the website, so if you want to take a look at the completed files, if you're having any trouble, it may help you along.